as per section 56(1) of the Act, which provides that the placement service shall coordinate the placement of the government-sponsored students to universities and colleges. Section 2 of the same Act defines a university as a university to which a charter has been granted. There is no distinction as to whether it is private or public for purposes of placement of government-sponsored students. At the same time, Honorable Speaker, sir, Section 56(3) of the Act requires the placement service to establish a criteria to enable students access the courses for which they applied, taking into account the students' qualifications and the listed priorities. The law therefore placed value on the choice of a student for purposes of placement, and this is the legal framework for which private universities were based. And I will request the honorable members also to vote the answered, because there was a serious discussion in this honorable house in 2012, and the honorable members, one, if you look at the answer, there was an argument to put the public, and the public item was actually removed by this honorable house, and therefore it provided the loophole in the legal framework for what was now done, admitting government-sponsored students to private universities, to be done since the year subsequent to that act. Mr. Speaker, sir, before 2016, admission to public universities was determined by their available bed capacity. Due to the limited capacity in our public universities, the cut-off points for admission were increased in successive years, rocking out many eligible students. For example, in the year 2014-2015, 165,000 candidates at C+ and above, against a capacity of only 63,740. This saw only 38.6% access university education, while 61.4% were left out. In the following year, 2015-2016, 61% of those with a C+ and above were also left out. In this regard, placement to private universities was useful in helping to address the capacity constraints in our public universities and increasing access to university education. Consequently, in the year 2016-2017 placement cycle, for example, the percentage of students placed in universities grew to 93.46% from 39.02%. The preceding year, table Q007, which I've given there, shows the percentage of students placed when capacities in both private and private universities were utilized. So you can see in these years, the number has actually gone up because we kind of created room for others to get into private universities, and the number went to 93.46%. In addition, Mr. Speaker, private universities also play a critical role in increasing capacity for competitive and priority programs, both locally and internationally. For example, the total capacity declared for Bachelor of Nursing in the year 2022 candidature in both private and public universities is 1,520, with 555, which is 36.5%, being in private universities. So these Kenyans who are 555 who want to do nursing would not have gotten a place because we don't have capacity in our public universities for this particular course, nursing, because it's a technical area, to access this kind of education if we do not have certain private universities that were offering this particular course. The second part of the question, Honorable Speaker, is that after placement of students to universities, the university fund determines and allocates the available funding in accordance with the differential unit cost of the degree program, commonly known as DUC. The DUC has 14 programs, program clusters for undergraduate degree courses. The number of government-sponsored students enrolled in each cluster is used to determine the allocation of the available funds as allocated by the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, in the financial year 2022-2023, a total of 89,644 government-sponsored students in private universities were funded at a cost of 3,174,791,604. This translates to 18.11% of the differential unit cost. The recommended funding per student in both public and private universities is 80% of the DUC. So you can now be able to get the difference between 80% and 18.11. The amount that was disbursed to each private university of the government-sponsored students in the financial year 2022-2023 is indicated in Table 9, Q9, which indicates the amount, honorable members and honorable Speaker, that was disbursed to each and every university out of almost the 3.2 billion that you did allocate through the means of education. For the financial year 2023-2024, we projected that 18,430 students will be completing their studies, those from private universities. Consequently, the continuing students to be funded in private universities will be 71,214. If the amount allocated remains the same as the allocation in the financial year 2022-2023, then the 71,214 students will be funded at an average of 22% of the DUC. That is the differential unit cost, as opposed to 80%, which of course was the figure which we had committed as a government to be able to allocate. The amount that will be disbursed to each university for the continuing students will depend on the number of students to be funded in the university and the programs that they are pursuing. Because you know, like the most expensive course we have in the country is dentistry, which in Nairobi University goes at 740,000. So if the government was to give 80% of 740,000, you will be able to see how much it will be. I wish to inform the House, Mr. Speaker, that in the financial year 2023-2024, government scholarships and the new funding university model will not be available to students who choose to join private universities. And I repeat, government scholarships will not be available with effect from this coming financial year for students who make a choice to join private universities. Such students will either be eligible to apply for loans from the Higher Education Loan Support. And the third part of the question is that the number of self-sponsored students in private universities has been declining in successive years since the year 2019-2020 academic year, where it was 54.8%, and compared to the 2022-2023 academic year, where now it has declined to 20%. This can be explained by the fact that an increasing number of students in private universities have been funded by the government in the successful years, And we have also provided a table indicated as Q10, which provides the details of the enrollment. For the same reason of increased government sponsorship, there has also been a decline in the number of self-sponsored students in public universities, from 42% in the year 2019-2020 academic year to 21% in the year 2022-2023 academic year, as shown in table Q11, which we have been able to indicate very, very clearly. Whether there are enough spaces in public universities, Honorable Speaker, we have said, as indicated in Section 56(1) of the Universities Act, it is the one which mandated the Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Placement Service to place government-sponsored students in those private universities. The definition of a university distinguishing public from private, and I think that is one of the things that informed the decision that was taken then. The placement service has continued to place government students to universities and programs according to their choices, and therefore also something that we have now since rectified, and we will also be sending certain other amendments in due course to this House for consideration. The final part of the question, Honorable Speaker, is that since the financial year 2017-2018, university students have been funded based on the differentiated unit cost of programs. The government was expected to fund 80% of the cost, while the household fund 20%. But over the years, the number of students placed to universities has grown tremendously and remarkably so, posing challenges to the government's ability to meet the funding obligation. Indeed, the government contribution to the cost has been reducing from 66.4% in the financial year 2018-2019 to what it is now, this particular year, 48.11%, meaning we are not able to provide the remaining 32% to our public universities. And then the private universities, the figure is even lower at 18.11%. This has led to financial challenges in many of our public universities, and hence that is why we have been able to come up with a new funding system which we consider will be actually manageable, where government scholarships, we will cover an average of 61%, government loan an average of that 5.5%, and also the contribution an average of 3.1%. And we have been able to, we will be able to use the main testing equipment that we use in IRON's education board to determine the vulnerable who will be able to enjoy a scholarship of 82% as opposed to a loan of 18%, and the household contribution will be 0, because these are those we consider the highly vulnerable in our society, who we consider that the income is almost 0. Extremely needy, they will be able to get a scholarship of about 70% and a loan of 30%, and the household contribution will be 0, because these are those who have an income of between 0 and 23,000, about 20,000. So they will be able to get up from 23,000 up to around 50. The needy scholarships, we will be able to give 53%, and the loans at the 40%, and the household contribution will be 7%. And finally, the rest needy, anybody we consider enjoying a salary of about 200,000 will be able to get a scholarship of 38%, and if we so wish to get their own of 55%, and the household contribution will be 7%. The new funding model has various strengths that will ensure the sustainability of our public universities, which are currently undergoing a lot of financial challenges, Honorable Speaker. The funding model is student-centered. Universities will no longer be funded in terms of broad figures. The funding model is based on the actual cost of the program being pursued by the student. This will eliminate the risk of underfunding our universities, as was the case under the DUC model. And from out of our analysis, the cost of programs in our private universities vis-a-vis our public universities, of course, in the various subject areas, we have been able to give examples in the table, like we have given for in the Bachelor of Education and Arts. You can see our private universities we have given for our public universities in the table, like KCA University, Management University of Africa, Kiriri University, and the Islamic University of Kenya. A Bachelor of Arts degree, 77,790, 78,600, 82,350, and for Islamic University of Kenya, 96,000. And of course, our public universities, which one getting access to our public university will be able to access scholarships and other benefits. We have Kibabii, Kisii, Masai Mara, Chuka University, where the same course, the cost is 122,400. We have given a Bachelor of Medicine and Surgery, comparing the public universities plus the private. We have given a Bachelor of Commerce, and I think I don't have to go through each and every university because we have had a comparative analysis between the private and the public, so that even in the portal of COOPS, we are putting the information so that when a parent is choosing to go private, he knows the consequences of the decision that is taking. And each and every university, we have also been able to provide this fee structure so that the parents and the students will be aware of the amount of fees and how much the government will be able to pay and how much they will be able to pay. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are various other factors that will help to mitigate against any potential undercutting, and they include the demand for a given university and university programs. Besides the cost is one such consideration that anyone wanting to join a university takes into consideration. The institutional and the program plan also play a major role. Public universities are therefore expected to position themselves competitively in the market. The placement exercise will prioritize the filling capacities in public universities before any such consideration to private universities, unless one so chooses, because it also depends on the choice of an individual, and as one said, choices have consequences. There is a specialized program sometimes not available, like the one I said of nursing, where we don't have enough capacity, and therefore private universities will also be able to come in handy, particularly in that particular area. On average, Honorable Speaker, the cost of attending private universities will actually be higher than public universities, because students in public universities will receive government scholarships, as I've said. The scholarships will not be available in private universities. A growing demand for scholarships will attract more students and ensure the sustainability of our public universities. The cash flow in public universities under the new model will be better than under the DUC, because the amounts paid for the scholarship and the loans will be higher. The improved cash flow will enhance the quality of running and the training in our universities, because increased funds will facilitate the funding and improvement of the running and teaching resources, making the universities